Inglewood, California, comes producer, performer, and longtime hip hop artist Tony Nario. He's out now with new singles and new music. He just released a dope new visual. We're going to bring him in and talk to him about his new music, but also all of the music that he's done in the past. Let's go ahead and bring him in.
What up? What up, brother?
Peace, my brother. Peace, peace, peace. I was hoping you'd get all the shoes. You know what I'm saying? I know you got like a massive collection. That's dope.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I've been collecting kicks, man, since probably about my foot ain't grown since like 1996. So I got a bunch of oxidized old J's, bro, you remember the Creative Rex
Yeah.
that were like popping in 2000? I got some of those. Like I've always just bought shoes, man. Whatever I like, I'll buy.
That's
I know it's like
dope.
a thing now, but yeah. So most of
So
the
you
stuff
were
you'll
doing
see.
it before it was a thing.
Yeah, yeah. I knew homies. I have homies that are older than me in their 50s, like mid 50s already, and they've been collecting, you know, before it was a thing. Like back when, if you had Jordans, like it wasn't really easy to get. And remember, I mean, I don't want to glorify it, but I'm saying, remember, dudes were getting jacked for their
Yeah,
shoes,
yeah.
like
You get
from
jacked for some Jordans and a
yeah.
starter coat.
Yeah, exactly. So, I have homies that were like from that era. Um, my father bought me my first pair of Jordan 5s, which they just re-released the metallics. So I actually got lucky on those and got me a pair of those as well. So it's like a little nostalgia. A lot of the shit too, man, is just like I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't um gamble too much. I won $20 today. Shout out to Chris Eubanks, who just won his fight against Conor Ben out in the UK. That was a huge fight. So I won a little $20 from the homie. But I don't really have like vices like that. So my vice is like clothing, hats, and shoes. That's like, and then obviously music, and then spending money on my kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's dope, man. Those are all healthy, and you can hold them and enjoy them, many times. So that's really dope.
Yeah.
You got some new heat that you've been
Thank
dropping,
you.
a slew of singles and a very dope visual for Trailo. Talk to us about this new material.
So, I mean, look, I've been rapping for a long time. And as, a Mexican in hip hop, man, the influence as a youngster was just everything that was coming out the East. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? I'm 46. So, I came from the era where that was the influence. Um, and then obviously as it evolved, NWA, you move forward, right? From the West Coast, King T, Rodney O, and Joe Cooley, like all these great legends that came out the West that maybe a lot of people don't necessarily talk about all the time.
yeah,
So anyway, the reason why I'm saying all that is because through that influence, you know what I'm saying? I just was like learning how to be an artist is kind of crazy, right? Because even today, I watch a lot of the young artists and they're still mimicking.
yeah,
And when you're going to be a great artist, you actually have to find your own lane. Like that's what makes you that's actually what'll separate you from everybody. So I spent a lot of my younger years chasing, trying to be Jay, trying to be Nas,
hmm
Eminem, and all these great artists that came before me. You know what I mean? And anyway, fast forward where I'm at right now, this new material, I'm starting to realize that a big thing in hip hop is the representation of culture,
yeah,
and that's like the main thing. So like where hip hop in itself um is street urban culture,
yeah,
right? Because some people say, well, it's black culture. I would say it's black street culture.
yeah,
Um, for the time of where it came out of, from the Bronx. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? So once you start going to different areas, it's from those areas. That's what it is.
yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So
Inglewood, New Orleans, other areas, Tidewater, Virginia, Chicago, right?
it's
They have regional sounds.
it's different, and even just their lifestyles, just the way they are. So what I think I lacked was the fact that coming up I was mimicking so much New York style, and maybe I still do, even the way I dress, because it's really not technically like West Coast attire, right? I still love, but I know how to implement it now in the music, which is what you're seeing.
Yeah,
So these are now basically like lead ups to the album that I'm gonna put out called Chicano Hip Hop. So
That's dope.
so everything in this track, shout out to my man Breeze, you know what I'm saying, who produced pretty much the whole album. We have a couple guest producers on there, the homie Kano and the homie Jericho. They got a couple tracks on there. So, but the music is produced where the sound is going to catch people culturally. There's samples in there that people are going to gravitate, but yet it's still allowing me to do my thing the way I like to flow and rap. And then I'm doing Spanglish.
Yeah.
So so if you notice too, the Spanglish, like I know people do Spanglish, and I'm not here to say, nobody does it right. What I'll say about me is if you notice when I do it, the Spanish always connects to the English in transition to what I'm talking about. It's not just some random Spanish words in there. You
Right.
get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, you're interweaving the bilingual with the actual song and the whole narrative.
Yes. And because I felt like I would hear people do the Spanglish and they would just be like, you know, oh yeah, pocos pero locos, fuchi, you know what I do, I get luch. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you saying? Whereas me, it's like, miren quien llegó, yo soy el mero mero. Y'all dudes acting like straight bitches.
Right.
Sentimental. My flow mental, mejor que se pongan frenos. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm going to put the things in there because people obviously won't necessarily always know what I'm saying. But when they catch the punchlines, they'll be like, oh, yo, pump your brakes. That's, ponte los frenos.
Yeah,
And I want to say things that people will start to catch and be like, oh, that's catchy. You know what I mean? Oh, hey, ponte los frenos. I want to hear people say it like that. You know what I mean?
that's
So
dope.
that's kind of where it's at right now, in terms of the direction. The project's done, just getting the mixing done, getting the artwork done, getting last scratches done, some last features that I'm looking for as far as for hooks. Because I pretty much write everything.
Yeah,
Me and my producer, Loon, aka Breeze, we go through everything back and forth. And we always want to make sure that everything's right. We shoot back and forth ideas of like, yo, I have this idea for this song. What do you think? Yeah, that's cool, but what if you did this to it? And then we're like, oh yeah, that probably would be better. So then we just kind of ping pong back and forth. You feel me?
the Chicano Hip Hop is a dope name for an album. It kind of is a like a genre and an album. So anybody looking for that will find it. That's really dope. But I've seen you spelling it with the XI, right? Is
Yeah.
that chi like the native language, right? Can you
Yes.
talk to us about the spelling of that? And is that how it's going to be spelled?
Yeah. That's so okay. So like for a long time, man, like that was part of my journey as well, learning what Chicano was because so there's Chicano rap,
Hmm.
and I never wanted to disrespect Chicano rap. And so when I decided to do this, I talked to a lot of people. Again, like my man Breeze, who has produced for like Capone and like Little Rob and all these other dudes that are predominant, really dominant rather in the Chicano rap industry. And I talked to Midget Loco. He's another big one for me. MC Peps recently, who are like, if you guys look up these guys, there's a whole genre in the Chicano rap market of Mexicans that have been doing this since the early 90s, bro. And I'm talking about, people might say like, because I was one of those people and I'll never front. Like, but the reason was because they didn't I didn't feel like they embraced us. So as I learned that they did embrace us, it just had to be a conversation. I started learning about our native tongue, which was Nawa. You know what I'm saying? And the X, how it was. That's why it's not Mexico, it's Mexico. With the original, that's why it's the X. You actually don't say, it's not the h sound, it's the sh. That's why if you remember that chick that used to have a show back in the day on Spanish Channel, the Shusha, and it was
Yeah,
spelled with an
yeah.
X. That's why it was like that. Shusha, Mexicano.
Uh,
So
oh,
yeah, so it's just derives back into the culture, me learning what Chicanoism really actually is, what it meant to the Chicano rappers as well, and then also coming to terms with, see, because we all used to, a lot of us from my class, like I think I heard Any Mean say it, on your interview with him. There was a class of us that was like the I guess you could say the swag, even before the swag, which is,
Yeah.
but they used to tell us that, that's why there was a separation, because we used to tell it, they used to tell us like, oh, you guys are trying to be black, you guys are trying to act like the black guys, this and that, when it was like, nah, bro,
This is
we're
hip
not
hop.
from yeah. Well, at one time, because I think you're from East LA, right?
No, no, I'm from the East Coast.
You're originally from the East Coast, but you
Yeah.
you be in East LA a
All the
lot though.
time.
Yeah, so but East LA is very different now, and it didn't used to be what it is now. It was very much like little Mexico over there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Mexico. And if you were from over here, and the way we dress, because we grew up a little bit more intertwined with the black people
Yeah.
over here, because we were essentially more outnumbered at the time that I moved to Inglewood, which was like 84, 86, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, it was like that. So then they would look at us and be like, oh, they're trying to be like that, but it's not. We're just into hip hop, bro. That's it. But that had to be a real conversation and continue to grow to where it was like, oh, I am Chicano and I can represent this. And, me and Midget Loco actually have a record that we did almost 10, 11 years ago that they still are hitting us up every year now to do at the Mexica New Year, called Mexicano,
That's
where the whole
dope.
track is us talking about, the land that was stolen, the way it was done. And I know people will bring up the, oh, well, the land was actually, they sold it and this and that. It's like, yeah, there's a difference between, someone throwing you a couple
Right,
dollars because they feel
right.
bad.
Somebody putting a
Yeah.
gun to your head, right?
Exactly. And nobody ever really wants to get into detail with that conversation. But so I just have gotten really close into that. And through that, now the imagery of the videos, I'm starting to implement the freshness of how I like to dress to the freshness of what a Chicano rapper or a Chicano who is a gang member that was a cholo maybe, because they're fresh, but they're fresh in their own way. They might wear the big Levi's with, whatever, I think some have, a lot more have modernized like the shoes and all that. But at one time it was, Cortez, or it might have gone to Reebok Classics. But there was a uniform for being a
Yeah.
cholo, which for me, because I knew that uniform, I kind of stayed away from it because, well, for one, my dad wouldn't let me dress that way. And two, I knew what came with it.
That's right.
Because out here on the West, as you know, they'll check your temperature. Hey, where you from? Not to say they won't hit you up anyway, but I noticed the less I dressed like that, the less I was getting hit
Yeah,
up.
you can always catch a fade. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah,
You can, but there's a difference with wearing certain dress in a certain way, certain hats,
right,
right? Certain everything.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just one thing that you learn over here. But that's pretty much what it is right now, man. And it's a trip because there's, like I said, the class that I'm from, Smooth Hustle, my boy Rob's the one. Concrete, if you know him now, he's like a social media like comedian. He
Yeah.
used to rap at one time. And this whole, it was like a, hectic low, Mr. 150,000 out the trunk. Like, we used to really hustle, and all of those guys, like, we actually did shows together. We were on the circuit doing the Key Club, the Viper Room, Whiskey Go Go, you name it. We were all in that circle, you know what I mean, working with Sean Healy, doing shows and really grinding it out, while being ridiculed and said and told that, hey, you guys are being too this, you're acting too West Coast. And I had a couple deals on the table during the time, like Baby Bash and Little Rob, and I didn't understand it at that time because I was still learning and I was younger. But they were like, yeah, you should rap more like the Fresh Prince, like LL Cool J. And while I respected both, in my mind, I'm like, nah, I'm more like Nas. I'm more like Jay. Like, that's how I want to be. But mind you, when you're marketing music, they have to be able to market your
Yeah.
music. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? When you're dealing with major labels.
Absolutely.
So
They want to be able to put you into a box that like that's this skew, that's this skew, this is this skew. So they need you to fit into a certain skew.
yeah, yeah, essentially that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? And not that, and, some people take the box as a bad thing. Like, I don't want to be put in a box. Well, everyone is put in a box
Yeah,
because even black artists are put in a
absolutely.
box. Like if you talk about the West Coast, like Kendrick Lamar, this is for everybody, is really like an anomaly. Let's just be real.
Yeah,
Because prior to him, Game wasn't really working until he started pushing the bloodline that he was a blood.
100%.
You get what I'm saying? And once he did that, the career kind of took off because they were able to go, okay, well, yeah, he raps like this, but he looks like this in
Yeah,
LA. You get what I'm saying?
yeah,
And it's always been that way. And it's not saying that you can't look a different way, because obviously there's so much stuff out the West. Like, I went to school with cats from like English League and hieroglyphics, and we used to go to the shows for like Del the Funky Homo Sapien and Bus Driver and all them dudes, because even though I grew up in Inglewood, I went to school in Santa
yeah,
Monica. So I had like the best of both worlds. When I would come back, the homies were bumping like Digital Underground and fucking, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like Domino and so, and then you go over there and it's like all the underground Tumex and all that shit. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So
yeah.
it's like it was two different worlds. And it just was what it was, man.
That's dope, man. And there's so much richness of history that you're sharing with us that it's important for it to be captured. For a little bit, you talked about how essentially when you cross the bridge and you go over to East Los and that side, it was like a different universe back then.
Yeah.
Then you come back to, this area out here and you've got Inglewood, you've got Compton, you've got places
South
that
Central.
South Central, and the demographics have been changing also. So not only has it become more Latino now, but the demographics have changed going a little bit over to the East Coast side, where it's becoming a little bit more gentrified. Like apartment complexes are going
Yeah.
up, and it's changing.
I always give people this not analogy, what is it, what do you call it when you're like like metaphor, I guess you would say, or not even metaphor, an example. Let's just use that for lack of better terms. um if anyone has watched the Will I Am interview on Drink Champs, he tells you how he grew up
Right?
talking.
Because
That lets you
he grew
know
up in
what.
Ball Heights.
Exactly. So when he said, "Hey, Nene, what's up, Don? Hey, Linda, don't let him outside." He's talking like that not because he's making fun. He's talking like that because that's what he grew up around. That's what it was. And that's not saying that it didn't mature into something, because I know there's like a lot of cats that kind of came later, like that are my age now, and they're like, "Nah, man, we was always," and it was like, I never want to diss nobody, or like I'm the only one that grew up this way. You know what I mean? But I also know that a lot of cats started getting influence in those areas where they necessarily weren't coming west all the time, and they weren't really surrounded by black culture over there, but they were watched. We had uh what was it, fucking Yo MTV
Yeah,
Raps. We
yeah,
had um The Box. We had all these things, these channels that were starting to show us music videos from all these different areas, and this is the first time you start seeing stuff from everywhere. So now you're getting influenced by all
yeah,
this, as opposed to somebody like myself who actually grew up right in the middle of it. You get what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like I indulged into, as much as I'm proud of my Chicano culture and being Mexica,
yeah,
like I I'll say it like this: all my black homies, like my boy Joey Black, my man B Guns, my man Jay Young, um, my man Sick, RJ, like uh Lucky, CJ, all my homies, man, that I grew up with in the Inglewood area, they know as much about Mexica culture as I know about black culture.
wow,
So they know my abuela just like I know their mama.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like it was that close. So it wasn't like, oh, I grew up around. No, I grew up with. You
yeah,
get what I'm saying?
absolutely,
And they would come over, eat my food. I'd go over there, eat their food. And it was really like a cultural blend. So growing up that way, that's why for a long time, for me, I used to look at dudes and be like, come on, man. Because you start to have that attitude when guys are calling you a sellout and a wannabe and this and that. But those same guys, bald head, whatever, and you're like, oh, they're cholos, they don't really fuck with me like that. I can cuss.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, it's like they don't really fuck with me. And then you start seeing these bald headed cholos saying like, "Oh yeah, I've been listening to this and that," and you're like, "Yeah, right." Like y'all, like you start putting everybody in a box, which is a bad thing, right? I started realizing
It's
that,
hard. It's
and
hard to break out of that in our mind.
it is
Yeah.
because it's what I've been. It's what I'm looking at. I'm like, nah, y'all don't fuck with this style. Like y'all are like fucking only G funk and like that style, like gangster rap. You know what I mean? We got bars and metaphors over here, and we spitting, some real shit over here. You guys just talking gangster shit. So again, as I broke out of that, and I actually started to grow, more, and like I said, I always use midget because that's like midget and all the 27 junkies. My man Burst Rock, I'm pretty sure you
Yeah.
know him. He just came out in the Kendrick Lamar video breakdancing.
Yep.
All these guys are heavy into Chicano culture in terms of like this. They come from the gangster side too. Now I have aunts and uncles that also were like that as well, but
Yeah.
I never paid attention to that because they were into like oldies and shit like that. So when
Yeah.
I got to really sit down and meet guys like Midget and Stomper, rest in peace, and so many other like great individuals, man, and I realized like, oh, they really know their hip hop.
Yeah.
Like you have these conversations, you're like, all right, I'm a piece of shit. Like, why did I think
Yeah.
that? But it was just more of a thing where I had a certain encounters with certain individuals, and I thought, well, they're all like that, so they don't fuck with us like that. But that
Mm.
wasn't the case, man, because there's guys that did grow up listening to Mobb Deep and these different genres, and even though they were cholos, they were still into that very much. So same goes for East LA. Like, even though I'll say like, oh, there wasn't that many, still doesn't mean that they didn't get into it at an early age and that's what they were fucking
Yeah.
with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I leave it at that now, and I just kind of, I'm just doing my thing now. I'm staying away from being in other people's business. I broke away from that mentality. I also broke away from, like, I'm always competitive in terms of an MC because I come from the battle era where not the new wave, because them dudes are badass too.
It's
Because I ran
different.
a
Yeah.
league.
Yeah. That's different.
Yeah, I ran a league for 5 years called LA
Yeah.
Battlegroundz.
Yeah. We can jump into that next because that was
Okay.
one of the things I wanted to ask you about.
So I, but I used to come from where, they'd be like, yo, this Mexican can spit. Because I'd be on the corner just, off the top. Like, yo, what we doing? So, and I'm still very much like that. You know what I mean? Like, I still have that competitive energy, but I don't have that standoffish, like, demeanor. So
Yeah.
now, at one time, that's, I think, what was separating everybody, too. Everybody was trying to be the first. I'm going to be the first Mexican. And it's like, well, we could kind of all be if we really just put our heads together, pause, and just
Yeah.
fucking, you know what I
Make
mean?
something
Like
happen.
just get this, yeah, make it together. So that's kind of what's been going on right now, and I just been staying in my lane, digging deep, and working on this project, doing features. Shout out to my man Jazzo the Juggernaut, who I think is the reason why I got this interview, by the way.
Shout out to Jazzo. Shout out to Jazzo. You got an
Yeah,
incredible song with Jazzo called How Dinero.
yeah.
Maybe you could talk about that song because the hook is killer. Talk to us about How Dinero.
Yeah, I mean, he just shot me the track, produced by Cash One, sorry, and he was just like, "Yo, I got this track." Like, I'm like, "All right, well, what are we doing with it?" He was like, "Wow, I was thinking like we would talk about the perspective of like being like gardeners and like, but like in a metaphorical way where it's we're talking about maybe like things in the gardening, uh." business, so to speak, and but we'll make it into metaphors and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then he did his thing, and then I heard it, and I was like, all right, cool. So I started going, and I kind of went deeper into like a farmer's, in the
Yeah,
rancho. You
yeah,
know what I mean? So I kind of tapped into that, and I had done my verse, and the first like I think it's 6 or 8 bars. I turned it into a melody because at first it was just bars,
yeah.
and then like when I spit it, I'm like, that's cool. I'm like, what could I do to make it better? And I said, todo empieza de la tierra. Gotta dig deep de adentro hasta afuera. Some of my ancestors like the ones of mi abuela. Esto aquí is a hip hop escuela. So he loved that shit. He's like, yo, that's the hook. And
That's
I'm like,
just
for
dope.
real?
It is really, really fire hook.
I
That's
appreciate
crazy.
it.
So that was part of the rap,
That's
and
part of the
then
verse.
you just did you do that studio? Had you already come to the studio being like, this is gonna be a hook?
No, so I had laid my verse, and then I had laid my verse with Breeze, my boy Breeze, and then I sent it to him. And he was like, "Yo, you motherfucker!" He's like, "That's just hot." Then he invited me over to his to the homie Shovel and Hammer, John Henry studio, and he laid his verse over there, and uh and then we were listening to it, and I was like, "All right, all right." So we had both the verses, and he was like, I want that to be the hook," and I was like, "All right." So we were waiting to get it back, and then I ended up taking it over to my boy Breeze, and he ended up doing the final mixing and editing on it. And I told him, I was like, well, this is how Jazzo wants to chop it up. You know what I mean? So do it like this. Breeze is a fucking magician, mastermind, scientist, and
Yeah.
shit. So he was like, all right. So he chopped it up,
Take a
put
little
it
something
where,
from here, put it over here, do the whole.
yeah. So we did that, chopped it up, put it. Before we had the record. I know we're supposed to be doing the video soon. We ain't done the video soon, but I mean, we haven't done the video yet, but I know we're supposed to be doing it
That's gonna
soon. So
be
it's
dope.
gonna be fire too, because we got some crazy ideas for it.
That's dope. That's dope, man. That's a really standout track, and my preparation for Jazzo, that song really stood out to me, and the hook was incredible. It gave me kind of like Fuji's vibe, you know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? But like LA and totally uh Latino Chicano flavor, but it had like that Fuji's and it had great energy, great hook.
I told him when it was done, I'm like, bro, I'm a big believer in the Most High, and I said, the Most High don't make mistakes, bro. There's a reason why he sampled that at this time while I'm doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it was meant to be that way because Jazzo is half Latino too,
yeah,
and I think Guatemalan if I'm not mistaken, and you know sometimes me and him have this conversations, you know what I mean, where I told him like, you gotta represent that shit more. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And there's a story behind that. I don't want to tell
yeah,
his story, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But there's a story behind why he kind of hides it a little bit or did at one time. But now he's kind of broken out more. And I mean, he's just that overall, he's easy to work with too. He's a great guy, man. He's a great guy. I appreciate him. You guys are Low Life Brothers?
Yeah. So I love Polo. I'm Polo from head to toe, but I don't know if I would say that I'm low life. That's a very specific thing. But he
Okay.
is for
Oh
sure.
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, so I wasn't sure. I think I asked him, and he probably told me that. But yeah, man, I know. I've listened, man. I know that there's a lot of relationships he has that there's even like I'm never. I'm always one of those people that likes to give people their flowers. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
No matter what I've accomplished or whatever. Like, and I know I would say I'm not just gonna say all because maybe, but you would be able to clarify this for me. I would say you just even taking a chance to look at it had to do with my relationship with Jazz.
For sure.
Okay.
It put a lot of things on my radar, and also, the fact that you're like local here in LA and been grinding and have had impressive things like the LA Battlegrounds,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like that's really, really dope. I wanted you to share a little bit about that with us. Now that was a battle league here in LA that you ran for years. Talk to us about that.
So I think we started it in like 2000. I want to say 2012, 2013, because I know we did, like it ended in 2016, I think, somewhere around there. So basically, what it was I had already been on on these YouTube channels watching like Grind Time.
Hmm.
I had been to WRC events, watched homies battle like Pause One, you know what I mean? What's his name? Fuck, I hate when I lose my train of
Well,
not train of
passwords. We
thought,
just
but
had
Pat
passwords on.
yeah, but
Passwords a
password
big one.
yeah, Passwords is a West Coast legend too, and like he was one of the early Grind Time cats. Him, because Locksmith even battled on Grind
It's
Time.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean he battled Disaster, and this was early Disaster, like early, early, early. So anyway, to not drag it out, man. Watch them. Then I started watching KOTD when they were like doing it in hallways, which is King of the Dot, the Canadian cast, which is shout out to my man Organic. That's the homie. And then Smack. from the DVDs, which we all used to watch, I would think anybody that was into battle rap, we was watching like Serious Jones, Murder Mook, Party Artie, those classic battles. Um, they turned it into something called the URL, which was the Ultimate Rap League. So I'm watching all this going on, and I'm like, yo, we don't have shit like this in LA. Like, that would be dope if we did something like this. So I had a homie named Mr. Woods, rest in peace, Armando Woods. He passed away a few years ago. We had teamed up with this dude. He was running a league called LA Rap League. But like his vision ended up being something different, because like we were putting on events and they were popping, but I noticed that his channel was about like putting everything that's LA rap, whether it was a video or an interview. And I was like, nah, I'm trying to be like the West Coast
Yeah.
URL, like I'm trying to do like what they're doing up in the Bay and Grind Time. Because even Grind Time was a little bit different, because not saying they didn't have cats that were from the street, you know what I mean? Because obviously like Passwords and them are from their areas, but they didn't represent like what I was looking for. Guys that were essays, Crips, and Bloods that were battle rappers.
Yep.
Like I wanted that street
Yeah.
element. You get what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
that's what we're known for. So you know, we ended up falling out with the dude. I started LA Battlegroundz, me and Woods did, and we just started from there, man. We just started building from there. Like there's a league called Daily Duels that was out in like the IE, and a lot of them were like predominantly like Mexicanos or whatever, like mixed,
Yeah.
Latinos. They came over and we were doing our thing, but we would do a lot of stuff like in the city, and then shout out to like guys like Dre Vicious and Active, who are from Grape Street. They helped me and Woods put on, and Glasses, my compadre Glasses
Yeah.
Malone. He helped with that as well too, because he has so many ties, politics. We actually did a tryout in at the Watts Towers,
That
and
would have been. That's so crazy. So you actually did
yeah,
it there.
if you go to LA Battlegroundz, you will find the footage right there, and that's where we found guys like rest in peace Young B the Future. You ever heard of him from
Nah.
Moreno Valley?
Mm-mm.
So, man, if you look him up, Young Be the Future started with us, and then we started building them. Then he went to Vegas. He started battling over there. Next thing you know, he was catching wind. He ended up battling for Snoop Dogg. Snoop, like, he got so close with Snoop that when Young B was, taken from us wrongfully, man, Snoop actually paid for his funeral. Like, that's how close he had gotten with him.
Wow.
Yeah, so it just kept growing. We ran it for like 5-6 years, man. But it was like, it's kind of a thankless genre, because you're doing all these events and you're
Yeah.
putting in all this money. Sometimes the ROI is not really, you might not get a ROI. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, so, and then you have these artists like thinking like, oh well, it's because of my talent. While it is your talent, if it was just your talent, you could just go on the corner and you'd blow up. That's not what's happening.
Yeah.
So so eventually, me and Woods were already like kind of going through some things on the business side of it. So we were already in the process of possibly splitting up at that time in terms of business. Um, and little by little, man, we just kind of stopped doing events altogether. Again, I always did it for the love and to
Yeah.
help people. But when I felt like, yo, the love and everything that I'm putting into this is not really being reciprocated in the sense of like what we're trying to do. I mean, you got people getting mad because we won't put like their songs on, on the intro, or stuff like that. Like, like,
Right.
bro,
The
you're
more
on
people
camera.
involved, the more complicated it gets.
Yeah, it's just crazy because the whole thing it's battle rap. So it's like while we will play music, we don't have to, and that's
Yeah.
not part of the deal. Now, if you want to negotiate that, that could have been, that could have always been something that we could have been like, hey, well, I want to battle, but I want, my video, I want my song on the intro of the videos, and I'll battle for you for the next, 3-4 times, for free or for, whatever. Because not everybody came in with like a fan base.
Yeah.
As we grew, we would have guys come to us and go, hey man, I'm bringing X amount of people, and you go watch their videos. You're like, oh, okay, cool. All right, well, what are you asking for? And it's, oh, 500, whatever. 500. Okay, well, how, we're gonna have to really, and sometimes we'll take a chance. Okay, we're gonna give you the five, You need to, but part of the contract, it would be a whole contract written out. You got to promote it. You got to post this X amount of times. You got to do a drop video. You got to come show up to do a face off. You got to all these things. And we had built it up, man. I would say to date, our biggest battle that really blew up the West Coast period to actually make them recognize LA Battlegroundz, because obviously Grindtime already had their thing with Lush One and all, Direct. Like I would never say like we did something,
Right.
above them, because they had something great too. But what I will say is that when people really started taking notice of like the street element of what we were doing was when we had a battle with B Dot versus Danny Myers, and that battle actually sold, because we did it pay-per-view, and it sold, I believe, 10,000 pay-per-views at
That's
$20.
dope.
Yeah. So that was when we were
That
really
was
finally able to start.
that was a $20,000 pay-per-view event, separate from what happened in person. That's dope.
Yeah. So and that night was packed too. I remember Razkaz was there, Little Half Dead showed up. At that time, me and Glasses and the homie Tommy Guns from Drastic Measures, we had a studio together in Long Beach. And it was a double studio upstairs, but downstairs was just open space. So I would tell them, yo, I'm going to use this area and utilize it to do the events.
Yeah.
And then Glasses had this really crazy prop, which was like a super giant sized boombox. So we would use that as the backdrop. It was
Perfect. It's
dope,
the
man.
perfect prop.
Yeah, it was dope, bro. I mean, we had some great events. We had the homies BZ Films. He helped us with the very first LA Beef event, because we ended up having series. Like we had LA Beef 1, LA Beef 2. The tryouts were called Catch That Fade tryouts, CDF tryouts, like Catch That Fade, West Coast shit.
It was tough.
Yeah. We would come up with all kinds of concepts and ideas, man. What was the other? We had domestic violence, which were the men versus women. You know what I mean? We started a lot of shit that people like kept running with after, but we had already done it. And the proof is in the channel. Like we haven't taken those videos down. If you go to LA
Yeah.
Battlegroundz, it's all
So
there.
the LA Battlegroundz is currently like a YouTube
Yeah.
channel.
hmm Yeah,
That's dope,
all
man.
all the battles we ever had are on there. From the smallest guys to the most popular guys. We gave people shots, man. We gave people shots and let them. We would nourish and groom their talents to take them to the next level. And the ones that understood, we were able to. And eventually, like I said, what would happen was other little leagues would come in. They start paying these guys 200, 300. So now they're battling every, Tom, Dick, and Jerry and Joe, for $200, $300. And we're telling them, I mean, it's hard to tell them no when you're not necessarily paying them top dollar either, but they're also not seeing the vision, because the guys that did kind of pay, like a B Dot, he went on to make to take battles in URL and King of the Dot, where they're getting paid $3, $4, $5,000 to battle, as
Yeah.
opposed to $200, $300. But
Yeah.
they also weren't battling just anybody. And
Right.
then when they did start to just battle anybody, you seen the decline of their career as well, in terms of like you can water yourself down. You
Yeah.
can people get tired of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you're on the main stage, because even though we were trying to grow, like, it's always hard to compete with like KOTD and like and URL, because it's big money over there. You know what I mean? Like those are guys that have been A&Rs for Def Jam and shit, and like this is just me and my homie and like a couple of homies from around the way.
But you
And
did it,
we're
man. You made a thing.
yeah, for sure. It was dope. It was dope for what it was, for sure.
Have you have you ever thought about maybe bringing it back, or is it kind of just good where it's at?
People have told me to bring it,
In the
to ask me to bring it
comments,
back.
people are talking about it. Like, yeah, the big boom box. I mean, like, this is like a thing. It's
Yeah,
like
that's the
a
homie. The conclusion right there. That's the homie right there. He be wearing a mask and shit. That fool's dope. He's a rapper and a videographer. Look, they've asked me, man. I explained to all of them, man. It's just it's a lot that goes into it. It's not just like, I mean, bro, we would scout. I would countless nights sitting on YouTube getting emails from, yo, check me out, Alcatraz, boo 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 boo. And I'm watching them like, I'm like, you could get a catch that fade, bro. All right, cool. Because it sometimes, I mean, when they don't have it,
yeah. Well,
Cristopolis, they don't
that
they don't they
gives them
don't
an
have it yet.
opportunity to maybe they're dope.
Yeah. Well, what it does, because you can see it off rip when I'm watching a video, whether they're ready to come do this shit or they're, because see, so there's some guys that rap and then they just rap in their lyrics, right? And then there's other guys that when they're rapping, you can feel it.
Yeah.
Big difference. Big
Everything.
difference.
Everything.
So, and when you feel it, you're like, oof, okay, yeah, he's gonna be something big,
Yeah.
pause. And he's just like, so that's kind of how it was, man. And it was countless nights of that, countless nights of video editing where I would have to go sit with Woods, look at final cuts, because we didn't really edit stuff, but we would still have to make sure like if we had sponsors where we're going to place the sponsorship logos, and are we going to put it in between rounds? Are we going to do this and that? You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So it was like anybody who has approached me, I told them, if you're willing to put in the time and you're willing to put up the money, because I ain't going to be putting up the shit myself,
Yeah.
then we can create a contract and we can move forward. I mean, that's what it would take for me to bring it back, to be honest. I know how the shit runs and I know I could get it, because one thing I have a good eye for is talent.
Yeah.
Like I believe I could be an A&R. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like even with records. Remember when Travis Scott came out with the Goosebumps
Yep.
record? I remember I heard that shit so many, like almost like 8 months before it was even out. I told Glasses this is gonna be a single. He was like, "You think so?" I'm like, "Yeah, bro." He's like, "It's all right," and I'm like, "Nah, bro, this shit is hot." Sure enough, that ends up being a fucking big ass
Yeah.
record. I remember I told him, I said, Russ, I knew about Russ like probably about 10, 15 years ago.
Wow.
And I was like, when he had that one time, two times too many, like, and I remember telling my boy Glasses again, because this is who I'm with a majority of the time, and I'm like, this dude Russ is gonna be some shit, bro. Like he's already blowing up.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna be some shit. And he's like, I was like, I don't know if he's gonna get like superstar status. I go, he's gonna do fucking stadiums, bro. And he was like, stadiums. I'm like, bro, he's already fucking doing clubs. And sure enough, I mean, that dude's doing like selling out
He's doing
shows with
whatever he
like,
wants. He's got a great creative genius marketing mind.
yeah, dude's ill. But I seen it. Like I seen that shit when he was doing his SoundCloud, like I think it was like one song a week, and then he went from that to, or he did an album rather. I'm sorry, he did like a few albums, and then he ended up doing the singles per week. Like every week he was dropping a new single for like I don't know how many years. And I would listen to that shit. I'm like, yo, this dude's dope. This dude's dope. Just listening to shit, getting inspired myself,
Hmm.
to put out my projects together and shit like that. And so the same shit goes for LA Battlegroundz, man. Like, I know the formula and I know what can be done, but it does take finances and it takes people that understand the vision, because a big thing, I'm a big boxing fan. Like I just told you, I watched, a
I
lot of
love
people don't even
boxing
know who the fuck.
too.
So you know who Chris Eubanks is.
Yeah.
So Junior and Chris and Senior. So that fight took place today, and I used to, Mr. Woods, Armando, he was a big boxing fan. So our approach to setting up bouts within battle rap was always that.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the rapping, it was like height. It was like style. It was, you get what I'm
Right.
saying? It was like,
The face off, the build up. Because anybody who's a boxing fan knows that the build up is everything.
yeah,
The sweet science sometimes for those that aren't connoisseurs could be a little slow,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But it's the build up that's everything.
exactly. And that's what a lot of people that I notice, because there's still leagues out here doing their shit. But when I see the ones that I've seen, because I don't really keep up with it as much, but the ones I've seen, they're still not matching up styles. They're not matching up styles. They're just like, we're gonna put fucking Hector versus Jose. Like,
Right.
okay, why? You know what I mean? Like, is he a punchline rapper and he's a punchline rapper? Is he a storyteller and he's a storyteller? Is he just, maybe he's a double time rapper
Mhm.
in battle rap form and he's a double time rapper? Like, there has to, like, you have to look at styles, in my personal opinion, to make these kind of matches
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
for people to talk about them. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
Styles make fights.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's dope.
So,
That's
yeah.
dope. That's. Thank you for explaining the history. Really dope. Well thought out league. And yeah, you never know, man. I hope that joint comes back. You know what I'm saying? That could be really dope.
Well, see, I'm right now, man. I'm really focused on this music right now,
Yeah,
putting out these projects. Um, like I'm working. I also help curate my boy's podcast, Glasses No Ceilings podcast, which is on Black Effect with Charlemagne the God. You guys can catch that. He has the lunch hour like every day at 12:30 on YouTube,
so
and and I say help curate because we'll have conversations. He has me come in, we go over ideas, and then he runs with them. You know what I mean? And I'm always creating. My daughter's an artist. She's in performing arts school. She plays the violin. She's an equestrian rider. You
that's
know,
dope.
I
The
just
real
had a
polo.
yeah, for real. I just had a son. He's 10 months,
Congratulations,
so I got.
bro.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. So, you know, talk about favorite rappers. My son's name is Nasir.
Uh,
Nasir Rhythm.
that's dope.
Yeah,
Nas is probably my favorite rapper too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's something
Hands down, bro.
about the how he does it. He makes it look effortless, the voice,
There's
everything.
just
You know what I'm saying?
there's just a coolness to him, man,
Yeah,
and
he's
kind of
cool.
like what he represents. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? There's like morals, integrity there.
yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Oh
Like
yeah,
that's why, like, even though I like Jay-Z a lot too, like when it came down to the battle and everything, like Nas kicked his ass. You know what I
yeah.
mean? There was no, it was
It was
pretty
different.
bad
It,
too.
it was like psychological.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Because some people would say Jay raps better than Nas in terms of flow, but when it came down to having to put it on a record and make it a real diss song, I mean, we seen who had the better diss song. So,
bro. Uh, Jay had Kanye West on production, a Doors sample of one of the great Doors songs.
mhm.
Um, he got the first punch. He got the sucker punch, and Nas still takes him out on Ether with a beat that's nowhere as dope as a Doors sample produced by Kanye West. Right? Ether is it's good. Right? It wasn't with the great production. Right?
Yeah.
Um, and just gets them psychologically. Just gets them like what
What
happened. Your
it
mom
was
treated you like this. The girls did this. You did this. And it was just like
yeah,
layers of child wound and father
yeah,
wound and like
yeah.
just obliterated them.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why when people say like, "Oh, Nas was lying," I'm like, "Nah, he's actually responding to shit that Jay was saying or alleging." You know what I'm saying? That's why when Jay came back with Super Ugly and he took a super low blow. You know what I mean? But by
Yeah,
that time, it was like, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, Stillmatic was, you know what I mean? Like he had more shots on there. Like, woke up this morning, got yourself a gun. I'm like, he's shooting at Jay on that. You
yeah,
know what I mean? There's other records on there that he was still shooting at Jay because Jay was still taking shots, but it is what it is,
yeah.
man.
It wound
Nas
up
is
being a great moment of hip hop history.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would say like another favorite of mine is like Cube. You know what I mean? Ice Cube's another one. Great storyteller.
Hmm.
Probably top three of all time in my personal opinion. Even though people will sit there and argue and be like, "Oh, what?" and it's like just because they prefer flow over whatever. Like I'm like, come on, bro. Like you're gonna tell me today was a good day isn't arguably probably the greatest story told on record, possibly of all time. Like that's a fucking great
I mean, who
fucking
did they
record.
bring out when the Dodgers won? You know what I'm saying? Who did they bring out for the? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
There's only one. There was only one. They knew who to bring out, and anybody who experienced Cube through the '90s and understood what he was, he went on to be, go into movies and become a bigger artist, creative overall outside of just hip hop. But what he did during the Predator, during even America's Most Wanted, even though that had more Bomb Squad sound, right? But what he does on Predator and what he does with the Lynch Mob, and this is the precursor to G Unit. This is the precursor to every group that came out after and brought the homies in, and not to mention everything he did with
right,
NWA, right? There's a
right,
difference between the Straight Outta Compton, record and the records that came after,
right.
right? So the impact he had on the writing, on the everything,
He was some
huge.
shit, man. And
Yeah, huge.
people don't put enough, emphasis on it. In my personal opinion, I get it. Time goes by, and you have all these different people. Like, And I would also say like Children's Story is another one that was an amazing story. Slick Rick.
Yeah.
And but you gotta give credit where credit is due. You know what I mean? So yeah, man.
Yeah, it's dope. The new record, Chicano Hip Hop. Do we have like, kind of like a time frame when you think you're gonna release it? What can you share with us about the album? I know that it's still kind of the final touches.
Um, I mean, it's really great cultural music. Um, you know, Definitely left field, because of the mixture of the what I love in terms of boom bap and like the what I can deem to be like, the hip hop sound that I like, which is sometimes a little bit more East Coast influence, but mixing that and making sure that I had that West Coast touch and I had that music that I know would touch, the melanin in people.
Yeah,
You get what I'm saying?
absolutely.
So like, because I look at those kind of records, I wouldn't just say like Chicano only. Like I would say people of melanin. Certain records just hit your soul. Like you don't even know why.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just like, man, that's funky, right? Like that's tight. Like that's soulful. That's just, you know what I mean? So I would say that's pretty much what I can tell you about that project. Time frame. I gotta see, man, because I want to get everything right. I have to get more videos done.
Mhm.
I'm actually waiting on a video right now to be returned that I still had to. That's the final series of the three that I already put out from the
Right.
Hustle, El
El
Presidente, and
Presidente.
Trailo.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So there's one last one to that. And those were all off of Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubts. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
took the beats off of that and I was like, you know what? And that was something me and Glasses had been working on for a while because, a lot of the direction I'm going were long conversations with him in the studio and just talking, him kind of like trying to break down things like, you have to put your culture in the music. He's like, it doesn't mean you're not, you didn't grow up this way and you're not cool and you're not this. He's like, he was Mexican is cool. He's like, Chicano is cool. He goes, but when you rap, he was like, you should be trying to rap more like when you're talking to your cousins or to your abuela or to your abuelo, your mom, your jefe or your jefita. Like, he was like, that's the conversation that should be on records. He's like, because what you're doing out here with with your homies, yeah, that is how you talk. He goes, but that's not how you talk at home. He's
Mhm.
like, and he was just a real big believer that how you talk at home is how you should talk on records.
Yeah.
You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And that should be the
100%.
conversation. So that's where it's at right now, man.
That's dope. That's dope. And you're doing that. You're bringing in the Spanglish, right? You're showing us on Trailo, El Presidente, Hustle. You're giving us a teaser, like kind of like a mixtape of what's coming
Yeah,
in Chicano rap
absolutely.
or Chicano hip hop.
Chicano hip
Yeah.
hop. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chicano rap is definitely, the homies, doing their thing and that's another thing too, man. A lot of the guys in Chicano rap, man, so I sold my first CD, The Escape. I sold about 10,000 copies on the street. I hustled,
Oh,
you
that's
know.
a lot. That's
Yeah, bro.
that's old school 10,000 copies. And that's
2002,
good. That's
bro.
good return on investment
Oh
too.
hell yeah, because I had only spent like probably about maybe 5K on the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it was like for sure. So when I did that, I was still like looking at certain individuals because I would go to like the swap meets to try to get them, to take my shit on consignment. Some of them would, but then I would see these big posters of like Mr. Capone and Mr. Shadow and all these. I'm like, and then Kool-Aid and E-Dub created the Pocos Pero Locos on Power
Yeah.
106 out here,
Yeah.
which was like a night show on Sundays where they would play like Mexican artists, but I noticed like they were mainly. That's why I would say like, oh, that's different because they're not playing us. They're playing like the cholos that are gangster rappers,
Yeah.
and that's where I kind of would see the separation happen for those that were in my class that were rap the way that we were rapping, the way I was rapping. Like on, I don't know if you checked out like Dougie Fresh, Real Hip
Yeah,
Hop,
I know.
like
Yeah, yeah, Dougie Fresh is dope.
yeah. So those were like different. That was a different style, but it was very much like you don't catch the accents. Like we're trying to sound quote unquote like black artists at that time, because when you're looking at it, you're like, well, I want to be accepted as the black artists are being accepted by everyone, so I have to rap in this way to do that.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that just wasn't the case. That's not really how it works. While you do have now guys that are having success, um, I believe that within the next 10 years, as they grow out of their 20s into their
Yeah.
30s, their demographic is going to grow up, and they're not going to be dressing and looking like they were as kids.
That's interesting.
And it's not to say you
I
say that
said
again.
it's really interesting because you change, you get married, you have kids, you have careers, and you kind of go. Yeah, everybody's out of high school. You
Right,
kind of go into certain kind of ways of living.
right. And when you look a certain way, like tattoos all on your face and all this, at some point, those people who were following you might not be on that anymore. So then who are you marketing to at that point? Because now you're older. So if you're not, if unless you, I mean, even when you look at a superstar like a Little Wayne,
Yeah.
like the spotlight, like Wayne's a legend, but the spotlight's not there
Yeah.
anymore, right? And even when he drops, he has this core fan base. Like, I'm gonna listen to his shit, but it's not the same like when you were a kid.
Definitely.
So I tell these, so I look at the young Mexican dudes because we were all on that. We're still on that. We still dress fresh and shit, but there's just certain things that the way they talk, even the lingo, all that stuff, as you get older, things do start to
Yeah.
change. You mature. You realize, like, I might not use that word anymore. That shit might it kind of sounds stupid on a 40 some year old man, you know? Uh, or you could continue that way with your friends and be that way, but who knows how that's actually going to mature as you continue to get older. So that's what I'm just saying with the music. I just think that right now I'm just trying to hit an audience where they're just kind of go, oh, this is more cultural based than it is age, tying it into an age category.
Yeah.
Because I feel like most artists, they're tied into age categories,
Yeah.
not really genres.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I'd be going all over the place, bro. So excuse my brain. Uh,
It's the brain of a person who loves music, that's a creative, and that knows a lot. You know what I'm saying? You're
appreciate
dropping
that.
an abundance of jewels, from marketing to, how an artist is perceived. How, so one thing is to want to rap the way that you want to rap, and another thing is to take another aspect of your culture and yourself and your identity and to create the project that's coming, which is Chicano hip hop,
Right.
right? So that's and this is gonna be new because in the past you haven't really done this multilingual. You've done lyrics, punchlines, and metaphors in English over like with the Dougie joint, like over hip, West Coast sound and hip hop. But now you're actually going to be going into that rich history of music that Mexico and Central America and South America have.
Hmm.
It's a very rich, different genres of music, untapped gems, untapped vinyl and sound. You know what I'm saying? It's
Hmm.
really, really cool that all of that still exists.
And just like just like to kind of going deeper on that. So this is the first time I'm doing full projects this way moving forward. So because if you go back, and that's the one thing I always like to tie into, because it's I like to pride myself. One thing about hip hop was always about the first to do something,
Yeah,
the before anyone else was doing it type of a thing, right? So um, what I will say is I wasn't the first, obviously, because shout out to Mellow Man Ace and Kid Frost on the West Coast, who were the first ones doing, like the whole Spanglish style. Um, I always had Spanglish records on the albums. Like if you go to the Escape, I have a record on there called Mexicumbia, and another one called Represento. And every project has a Spanglish song or two. Because I always was like, yeah, I was always proud of who I
yeah,
was. I was just trying to figure out, like, okay, what's my lane? You get what I'm
yeah,
saying? So this is the first time where now I'm like, okay, the full project's going to be bilingual, and I'm going to tap into the culture of who I am as a person, as a Chicano, as a Mexican American kid born to Mexican, parents from Mexico, here in Los Angeles. And hopefully, excuse me, that story will also resonate, like you said, with people who are from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, wherever they're from, you know what I mean? Like, I say this all the time, when they start, there's like a big discussion right now going on, and on the blogs and stuff, because, a dude said that, if Mexicans or Latinos weren't in hip hop, that, blacks wouldn't have no careers, in hip hop, basically, like without us. And while I don't think that that's necessarily true, because I think that they, black artists would still have people listening to their music. What I will say is we are definitely big consumers of it, and we were all there from the beginning. Not just Mexicans, whatever you were, if you were, Spanish speaking and brown skin, you were in the mix on the West Coast, you were probably going to be most likely Mexican, some kind of Salvadorian, Guatemalan, something like that, right? With a trickle of Cubans and Puerto Ricans that were out here that we didn't really know about at one time, right?
Right.
I started finding out we had communities of that, and I'm like, oh shit. On the East Coast, for damn sure the Puerto Ricans was already part of what was going on. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, come on now. Like, so again, I just think that that conversation, like we've always been involved. So I feel like when I tell my story, I hopefully will be able to even hit the people, because I use words like, pana, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Puerto Rico should know what that is, because if you love Big Pun, we know Big Pun used to call his brothers
Yep.
pana. So like I'll use stuff like that, like little references to like give like love to like different genres to go. It's like, yeah, Ras, because that's another conversation they've been talking about too, is like the term raza. It's like it's only Mexican. I mean, yeah, I think Mexicans have predominantly used it for sure. I'm not, but everything always takes this like different turn as language evolves, as people evolve. And so like me, if I say raza, when if you ask me, I'm gonna tell you, for me, raza is anybody that's into hip hop that fucks with us. You my raza. And I know what it is. I know the original sense of the word. I get,
Yeah.
I'm not stupid. I know that it was originally used by Mexicans, to represent us. But what I mean? Why can't it be the Salvadorian homie? Why can't it be the Guatemalan homie, or wherever they're from? You know what I mean? They can be raza too. Like, why
Yeah.
not? Why can't it be the black homies? You know what I mean? Like all the homies that we get along with. They can, if they're down, then we're down.
Yeah.
Just like we can be the, their brothers and sisters too. You know,
Yeah.
that's how I look at
That's
it.
dope. That's dope. And I think it's really important, for you as an artist, you do represent a specific aspect um of hip hop, which is being Latino, being of Mexican descent in LA, and everything that you experienced growing up in Inglewood. That story is different from other people's experiences in other parts of the country, and it's an important story that you're capturing. That in this new project, especially, right, Chicano Hip
Sure,
Hop, you're capturing that. You mentioned some of the legends from the past, Kid Frost, Mellow Man Ace, who did a lot of this. There's more. And we've kind of given head nods to Chicano rap and a lot of people out
for
there
sure.
throughout this interview, but your voice and growing up in Inglewood and everything that you experienced and making sure that that's documented, I think is super, super valuable because hip hop is major now. Right when Kid Frost dropped La Raza, when Mellow Man Ace, right,
Put out
check this
mentally
out,
ill.
baby.
Sorry.
You know what I'm saying? Check this
Yeah.
out, baby. When that came out, nobody knew hip hop would be as global and universal as it is.
Right.
And you're right that the yourself and the Kid Frost and the Mellow Man Ace and the Boricuas in New York, they were all there at the very beginning of this whole thing. But it's important for all this stuff to be documented, right? For the stories and what it was like for you to grow up in Inglewood in the 90s, right? What that was like, what it looked like, what it felt like, who your friends were, who you were, and how that was different from, crossing the bridge over here and going into East Los. And yeah, all of this stuff is gold, bro. These are the diamonds that are the fabric of this culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely, especially
yeah,
out here, you know what I mean? Because I feel like now it's kind of a lot of things are lost because now you have a lot of nepo kids, who are, growing up with parents that have already had some success, whether it's, in a career or in the music industry or whatever, and they're growing up, a little bit more privileged, and they're growing up more in, going to schools like with like that was the beautiful thing about my father was a sanitation driver for 30 some years. He's retired now. And one of the things about being able to go to school in Santa Monica was the diversity that I was able to see from and the difference from going to school here in Inglewood. Because I went to school at Oak Street in elementary. I went from first grade all the way to sixth, and then in the middle of sixth grade, they okayed me to go to school in Santa Monica. So I went to this middle school called Lincoln Middle School, and then I went to Samo High, Santa Monica High School. And when I tell you, man, like if I showed you my different sets of friends, you'd be like, "What is going on?" Because over here, I got guys like I told you, my man Joey and his brother Beezy and all these different people, right? And the homies, Batman and all these different guys, Pita, and then. We go over there to Santa Monica and it's like my boy Eric, my boy Oscar, my boy Ken, who's a 6'3" Chinese dude. You know what I mean? My boy Oscar, who's Mexican but kind of grew up more like around white guys, but still represents his Mexican color. My boy Eric, who's half white and half Filipino. Persian homies, and then you had other people that got bussed in over there, so they got that experience as well. But what I would notice sometimes is even some of the people that got bussed, they would still kind of go and gravitate into the circle that felt like home.
yeah.
Whereas for me, I played football since I was 6 years old. So because of that, the diversity of the football team allowed me to be in different groups.
That's dope.
So I got to be with the Mexican homies, the black homies, the Asian homies, the Persian homies, the Jewish homies. Like it was different groups, So that's what I think these young kids kind of they get. And because of that, they'll be like running around using certain verbiage and, oh yeah, I've been talking this way. And it's like, bro, it's a difference when you grew up a certain way and you ended up talking a certain way because your homies talked to you
Yeah,
that way. That's how your homies addressed you. So through time and evolution, that's how you naturally talk to your circle. But as you get older, you start to realize when you step out of that circle, it's not always going to be as accepted by other people for you to use certain verbiage.
for
It's
sure.
not, because especially if that verbiage is something that is considered negative or offensive, because maybe they don't even use that amongst themselves. I
Yeah,
think you get the gist of what I'm saying.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so I watched that and they're like, yeah, I've been talking this way. And it's like, bro, like you guys are telling our stories that you guys have heard. Because just because I don't necessarily have the biggest platform and the biggest following, I know people still watch my interviews. People will watch certain things. They take things that I say and will literally pass it off as their own. I've seen it. I'm like, wait, I've never heard you say that before. But I'm also the type of person that takes those things as flattery. Like, okay,
Imitation
whatever.
is the best flattery.
Yeah. So, again, so when I look at that, I'm just like, I think some of these kids nowadays, it's just kind of intertwined. So they're lost. Like they're lost. They're not, I don't think they're trying to be anything. I think they all act the same. There's just
Yeah,
not really an identity anymore. Like, like most of the kids don't have identities. Like even the white kids, like they're like, at least the ones that are like, I would say in like, on the West Coast that are in the scene of like this, rest in peace, like Draco the Ruler kind of a sound and
yeah.
look, how they dress and look and stuff. Like those kids that are in that, like you can't really tell them apart.
That's interesting.
You can't. You
That's
know what I
interesting.
mean? Like the only thing you can say is like they're Mexican and they'll say they're Mexican. That's cool. But their music and the stories they tell say absolutely nothing about that. And that's what I started noticing Chicano rap was doing, and that's why they were outselling us. So when I sold 10,000 and I'm going to the indoor over here, and Capone and Mr. Shadow and all these are getting 60,000 units bought by the freaking owner of the of the shop, while I'm trying to leave consignment and they're actually getting bought out CDs. What is going on? But you start to realize, no, they were actually rapping to the culture.
Yeah.
They were even if it was the cholo culture, it didn't matter. They were rapping to that culture.
Right.
That's why it was working. Guys like me were lost. We thought we're like, yeah, we got bars and dude, this is real hip hop, and it's like, yeah, okay, cool, but who's gonna buy it? And are you as good as the top guys doing it? See, that's the conversation motherfuckers don't ever really want to have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They think, oh, we're just as good as them. You're not as good as J. Cole, bro. You're not as good as Kendrick Lamar. And if you were, because the proof is always in the pudding.
You could be that in your own lane. And that's
Yes.
the thing, of figuring out your lane.
Yeah.
Because you could be that in your lane, but right now you're doing a poor rendition of somebody else.
Right. Right. You said that. You hit the nail on the head right there. You can do that, but you have to find your own voice. Because you might be as skilled, but if you're trying to rap in all English and you're hitting the same subject matters as these guys, like I trip out on like, you know, and I'm not dissing because I know J. Cole is a great rapper, but like J. Cole's not really the conscious rapper that they say he is. Like like a lot of his music is very surfaced. Like he don't really dig deep. He talks about like social conversations that are already they're on the news. You get what I'm saying? Whereas like if I listen to Immortal Technique,
right,
I'm gonna find out some shit that's going on in Lebanon, and you get what I'm saying?
Read some books.
Yeah, you're gonna have to find.
He's like the precursor to deeper to the rabbit hole.
Yeah, you know, and so when I think of like even Yasin Bey, you know, Mos Def. You know, I just had to pay respect because he calls himself Yasin Bey, so I'm gonna call him Yasin Bey.
Yeah.
But you know, when he would tell his stories, man, like I was listening to what was that one song, Profile in Front? You know what I'm talking about? Ba-bum, bum, bum. Shit, I can't remember the name of the album, but where he's talking about dudes, you know, trying to show off and stunt, you know, and bumping and their shit, and he's telling the stories at a time when that's not really being talked about. That's depth. Yeah. To talk about something that's not being talked about. That's good. That makes a real conscious rapper in my book. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's dope, my bro. My bro, thank you so much for all of the background, all of the stories that you shared, and the upcoming project, Xicano Hip Hop. As we start to wrap up, anything you want to share with us in regards to where people can find you, where they can learn about the album when it drops, and any final gems you want to leave with us?
So, you guys, Tony Nario is, you know, and all my links are in the bio as well. All the albums are on DSPs because I put them up. This project, what I'm planning to do is press up actual physical copies with some trinkets and goodies. And I'm going to, when I put it out, you know, I'll reach out to different people and put it to where I want people to, you know, come to me directly and take, you know, I understand people don't necessarily always buy physical copies, but I want to reach the people that actually like fuck with me so that I can get those off, and then later on I'll go ahead and put it on DSPs, you know. And there's some other stuff that I've been learning about DSPs where we actually can be making more money if we just didn't upload the whole song. Talk about that another day.
That's dope.
Man. Just some shit dope. I know though.
That's dope. So many gems, my bro. Tony Nario, it was great building with you, my bro. Xicano Hip Hop. I'm really looking forward to when that drops later this year. Yes. Great kind of build up that you've done with Trailo, El Presidente, and Hustle. And I think that you know, people that are familiar with your career as just an MC, as a person showing skill, bars, and to see you now kind of approach your career using Spanglish, I think they're going to really welcome this. So I look forward to it. That. Yeah, bro.
I appreciate you having me on the show, man. This is a really dope platform. I've watched a lot of your other interviews, man. So it was, you know, you know, muchas gracias, mucho
Gra-
respeto. You know what I mean? Keep doing it.
Thank you, my brother.
And, you know what I mean? Hey, man, maybe we could do it again sometime. Shit.
Absolutely, my bro. We'll run it back in the future. And we're local, you know, we're all around here. You know, you're probably like 20, 15, 20 minutes from me, you know what I'm saying? So
Okay, bet.
I see you around, my brother, and I look forward to building, and congratulations on the new project. I can't wait to hear it.
Chicano Hip Hop on the way, man. And shameless plug, if y'all don't fuck with the homies, X marks the spot 22. Y'all hit them up for some hats.
That's dope. That's dope. Salute, my bro. Peace.
Peace. God bless.